Guess who's got a birthday coming up? This fellow right here, Kalim, Mr. Sunshine and Rainbows, good vibes always, who I unfortunately do not have a birthday button of either, so we're going to make do with this dorm one for our celebratory Rosette. Because what better way is there to celebrate a birthday than to do some crafting? Naturally, our color palette is going to be Scarabia inspired as well, since the button is of the dorm uniform, and I think these ribbons will match that nicely. Now then, Kalim himself is the house warden of Scarabia and a sophomore at NRC who's really good at musicology, a member of the pop music club, and a fellow who likes to spend his free time throwing parties. He loves coconut juice and basically anything that Jamil cooks, but he isn't too fond of curry. The in-game album describes him as born into vast wealth. He is a generous boy who always has a smile on his face. He's grown up with Jamil since a young age and considers him a brother in all but blood. This description is quite apt for Kalim since throughout most of the story, if not all of it, he keeps a smile on his face and his chin up. In many ways, he is a ray of sunshine at this otherwise dreary, villainous school, and he'll share his optimistic disposition with everyone he comes across. It does not matter who you are, where you are from, and whether you like it or not, Kalim will throw you a party or two or three or however many you need to become his friend. He tries to see the good in everyone, even if it is to his detriment, a quality that is as honorable as it is frustrating. On that note, Kalim is not without his flaws, of course, as he can be quite pushy and very oblivious, which leads to a whole host of problems. Whether this is due to him being a bit of a space case or willfully oblivious, I can't quite tell, but in either case, it does lead to some delightfully comical moments, like when Kalim keeps feeding Grim crackers in Book 4. However, it can also have a more dire consequence, like being a major factor in poor Jamil's plight and a subsequent overblot. In Playful Land, Kalim wants to become buddies with Ernesto despite all of the context clues pointing in the other direction. In Book 4, he can hardly believe that Jamil betrayed him. In Silver's school uniform vignette, we see Kalim being fully reliant on Jamil. In the Firelit Sky event, we can see Kalim nonchalantly causing Jamil way more work as if it's just another Tuesday. And in that event, we also get a few stories from their shared childhood which shine a light on Kalim's negative qualities. In Edia's school uniform vignette, we can even see this overbearing consideration extend to others like Edia as well. There are a lot of moments where Kalim's choice to see good and be generous becomes a burden to others, and I think sometimes it's easy to write off Kalim's negative aspects because he's just so darn cute and so positive and happy, and just look at him, isn't he just the darndest little guy? Since there is so much genuine positivity within his actions, even other folks within the universe, like Riddle, can't fault him entirely even if they don't agree with his stance. But this doesn't negate the real-world consequences of these actions, and Kalim's struggle to hold on to his perception of the world while constantly having to face reality creates a nice conflict for his character. Given his disposition, it's much easier for him to believe that everything is wonderful and that everyone has good intentions. His upbringing as a golden child of sorts only reinforced this idea in his head that everything works out in his favor, since he won everything and did better than everyone else in everything, even when what he was doing was objectively lackluster. This coddling is also responsible for Kalim's inability to, or at least lack of willingness to, recognize the ill intentions of other people. It also doesn't help that the poor boy has absolutely been traumatized by friend and foe alike, which isn't explicitly discussed per se, however it is passively mentioned by both Kalim and Jamil in various story beats. Grim becoming the de facto poison tester in Book 4 is a bit of a concern. Jamil talking about ensuring there are no assassination attempts in Book 5 is also concerning. Kalim hinting at an assassination attempt that Jamil thwarted with his special magic, perhaps in a very deadly manner, is also really concerning. all sorts of little signs of Kalim's life being in danger and those around him having to deal with those threats. Yet, despite constantly being under threat, Kalim is just happy as a clam. Being next in line for something like a promotion or a position always puts you at risk, regardless of how influential that end position or promotion will make you. Malleus may not have anyone in line behind him, but he still needs retainers to ensure he survives to ascend the throne. Leona has his own complicated emotions due to Felina and Cheka standing in his way to the throne, and Kalim is one of many, many, many children, presumably from more than one mother, which means he is also in the way of many, many other people. People who may be willing to do anything to get their hands on his spot. After all, we have examples in universe like Hendrik, who is willing to wipe out an entire race of people just for some gems and resources. Leona might have at one point been keeping an eye open just in case, and Kalim has been poisoned in the past, presumably to take him out of the way of someone else. This bit of lore is dropped so casually and then treated as if it is super normal by the rest of the cast every other time that it's brought up, which is kinda concerning, but also, what are you gonna do, right? Poor boy has to get used to his position being threatened because it will forever be. And as an outsider, there is very little you can do to really change that. I highly doubt that things will stop once he takes over the family business. And while that is speculation on my part, I think it is something that Kalim is aware of. He seems to cope with this prevailing threat by being happy. Because if he can placate people, if he can make them happy, then maybe they won't want to harm him. Maybe they'll forget about their vendettas and become friends. It's much better to be besties and work together, right? Even someone like Ernesto is worthy of that sort of chance to Kalim because of the hope he holds that he and his friends will be safe if they can just convince Ernesto to turn over a new leaf. It's an interesting form of rationalization to me since I have historically had a hard time being that genuinely positive, and it's hard for me to piece together just how much of Kalim's joy is coping versus genuine enthusiasm. Because I do think that he has both, and I don't think it's as cut and dry even in an Ernesto situation to say that it is fully one way or the other. But the fact that he can consistently hold on to this hope even at the ninth hour, no matter how ridiculous it seems, is extremely admirable. Is it naive? Sure. After all folks are making their goals and motives abundantly clear. However, the most powerful position you can be in is one where you are underestimated, no? Once Kalim understands how to read people a little bit better, or when to retract his goodwill properly in such circumstances, I think he'll become a formidable foe. After all, his signature spell is as wondrous as it is deadly. Since he's so positive all of the time, I often forget that he can cause torrential tides in the blink of an eye when he wants to. The kid revives an entire dead river and gives it a gnarly current just to be able to save Jamil in Book 4, so he's absolutely capable of sweeping away his foes without much effort. Especially if his foes hear his incantation and are so used to it being a party trick that they laugh it off, completely unaware of the fate that will befall them. Given Kalim's character, though, I firmly believe he will give them every single chance he could possibly do before he resorts to those sorts of tactics. And most of the time, I doubt he'd be the one dealing with his foes anyway. Technically speaking, Jamil takes on the brunt of this work currently, and if he continues to be tied to Kalim, he'll likely be neutralizing these sorts of threats before they can even get to Kalim. But even still, our little ball of sunshine can't stay as he currently is forever, regardless of Jamil's presence. And Kalim knows that too. This acknowledgement and shift in Kalim's character is what I find to be the most fascinating part of him. Sure, his positivity is appealing, and he is a refreshing presence in our setting, but seeing him try to puzzle out how to move forward now that he's more aware of his flaws is much more entertaining, no? Is he going to be capable of growth? Will his mindset shift? Will he be able to retain his positive qualities during that shift? And how will his spirit of generosity be impacted? Will it change? Who knows? but I'm excited to find out. There are also smaller pieces of his character that I enjoy too, like his love of animals. It's probably just the way that Kalim expresses himself, but it's always a pleasure to see him interacting with or talking about critters. Though his philosophy may be a little flawed with how he goes about dealing with them, having good vibes will only get you so far, kid, but I digress. The story about him releasing all the animals in the family zoo is a highlight as well, in my opinion. Being a little activist without even realizing it, adorable. I also really liked his interaction with Cheka during the cloud calling event. It was a very wholesome and it reminded me that, oh yeah, Kalim is good with kids. It's almost like he's had practice with, I don't know, 50 some odd or more siblings. However, the interaction also showcased Kalim's gentle nature and willingness to engage with anyone, even a child. Honestly, cloud calling on the whole is just such a good event, and I think one of my favorite parts is Kalim being Kalim. Oh, you want me to join your team for this traditional sport? Sure. Need me to buy an entire bus for you? On it. Wow, look at all this stuff. I should bring it back to my dorm and just share with my fellows. We should scream our lungs out in the middle of the night before the competition, right? It's so much fun. Oh, we woke you up? Well, wanna join? Even the fact that he wins his final bout on a technicality because the bus driver of all people in the Sunset Savannah, was the other team's secret weapon, just was poetry in motion. Kalim's innocence and good nature just makes him so delightful, even if these aspects have negative impacts every now and again. Plus, we'd never get to see Leona on a carousel had it not been for Kalim and a little nudge from Ernesto, but mostly Kalim. Even though I don't think about him as often as some of the other characters, I do thoroughly enjoy Kalim's antics and whenever he's on screen. He's just so much fun and has a wonderfully inspiring energy about him, so he gets full marks in my book. There is also a willingness in him to try anything at least once that I also admire. He's not afraid to step out of his comfort zone into something new, sometimes to his detriment, yet regardless of which way it goes, he holds his head in shimmering confidence. After all, what's the worst that can happen? Probably death, but Kalim's already faced that, hasn't he? And he's won. So what is there to truly fear? On that note, here's 3 cheers to the sunshiny merchant to be, Kalim Al-Asim, on this wonderful, wondrous day of his birth. I get the feeling that Kalim would probably be down to craft something like this any day of the week, not just for his birthday. And he'd probably end up roping the entire dorm into the activity as well. What a wonderful time that would be, no? Anyways, I hope that this design does him justice, and I'd love to know your thoughts on Kalim, this Rosette, this little series, or whatever tangentially twist-related topic your heart desires as well. Of course, if comments aren't your thing, you could always like and subscribe instead to show your support. And before you go, I just have to remind you that you're amazing, and I hope you have a wonderful day.